So questions, we're asking people to type into the question and answer. We will probably get to most of them at the end after we present the information. If we see some pop up, we may kind of jump in along the way, but mostly we'll get to questions at the end. We'll answer as many as we can today here on the spot. Because this is about an open request for proposals, we'll also be noting down our questions and answers and posting them publicly for everyone, whether or not people were able to attend this webinar. And if we do get any questions today that we want to run by our legal team or just discuss a little bit internally, we may differ on some of those answers, but we'll get back to questioners with those answers and also post them publicly. So today we're going to walk through a little bit of background on MASSCEC'S work in the building decarbonization space, do an overview of this pilot program, Decarbonization Pathways, then talk a little bit about the opportunity for serving on an advisory panel and what that application process looks like, and then finally go into the application process for the lead technical consultant role. So we'll just quickly start with some introductions of our panelists here, and then we'll get started. I am Meg Howard. I'm a program director at the Mass Clean Energy Center, doing a lot of work in our building decarbonization space, especially on the residential side of things.
Hi, I'm Jacqueline Guile. I'm a program administrator, also with the Mass Clean Energy Center. And like Meg, I also do a lot of work on our buildings programs.
Hi everyone, my name is Leah. I'm a building decarbonization fellow with the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center. So focusing on helping with the buildings programs and generally just building department tasks.
And hi everyone, I'm Alyssa Whiteman and I'm with the Department of Energy Resources.
Thanks for joining us today, Alyssa. All right, so we'll jump in. First, a little bit of overview, standard of who the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center is. We're a quasi-state agency with a goal of growing the state's economy while also helping the state meet our climate goals and energy goals. So we sort of have several strategies that we pursue. Really around accelerating market adoption, have a heavy focus on workforce development, and then supporting an innovation ecosystem. We do a lot of work supporting startups and research. And then within these sort of three strategies, we have 4 focus areas. And the one we're talking about today is our high performance buildings work, but MASSCEC also does work on transportation, the net zero grid, as well as a focus on offshore wind. So sort of, I'm sure most of you are on the call are familiar with this slide, or at least this idea that our state has now committed, first from the governor's office and then through recently passed legislation to hit net zero targets by 2050. So within the building sector, that represents 27% of the state's emissions from emissions that come from on-site building fuel. So, heating, cooling buildings, that's not necessarily counting the electricity that comes from the grid, as that's sort of a separate chunk. But, that's got to get down to zero. And it's just a huge challenge. This number here was touching 2.5 million buildings. There's within those buildings, there's many different offices, homes, it's have to touch millions and millions of different spaces and actors. And then there's this last statistic we have here. It's, it's obviously something that touches people personally. Already households are spending an average of $2,500 on energy for their home a year in Massachusetts. So this is a big cost for consumers and another big factor to consider in all of this. I think at a high level from the state's decarbonization roadmap that's just come out, as well as the draft Clean Energy and Climate Plan, we're sort of converging a very high level strategy of, okay, we're going to, while thinking about the economic development and a just transition for all residents of the Commonwealth, we want to weatherize buildings, get as efficient as possible using as little energy as possible, transition the energy uses we do have to electricity, and then in parallel clean the electricity grid. But I think what that looks like in practice is still very much a live question. So that's definitely tied into the core of the decarbonization pilot that we'll talk more about in a minute. But before we jump into what this pilot is, we just wanted to give a quick background on MASSCEC'S work in this space. Mostly our work. We have a little bit of Department of Energy Resources as well here. Back at the start of the last decade, us and Department of Energy Resources were starting in 2012, 2014 to think about, what was the opportunity. A lot then was focused specifically around heating and cooling, but thinking about decarbonizing the building space. Then, by the middle of the last decade, starting at MASSCEC, we had scaled up a large-scale rebate program targeting heat pumps for heating. At that time, we weren't necessarily looking at whole home applications, but we were promoting heat pumps for heating. And then we sort of wound down that incentive program from us as our utility efficiency program was able to better support heat pumps for heating through their incentives. In the meantime, we had launched a couple pilots specifically targeting low-income sectors. One was called Solar Access. It was targeting households in the 60 to 80% of state median income range. Homeowners in that case trying to add solar and heat pumps through a combined financing package. And then another pilot acre was targeting customers on oil and propane below 60% of state median income and switching them over to whole home heat pumps and, if possible, solar as well. So both those pilots are sort of ongoing or just wrapping up in the case of Solar Access. And then around the same time, Alyssa and her team at Department of Energy Resources were running the Home MVP program, which was ended up being a lot of electrification, but was around performance-based incentives for efficiency and electrification measures. Then in May of 2019, we launched, MASSCEC launched our whole home air source heat pump pilot. Then last year, we've launched a Clean Energy Lives Here campaign, which has a lot of resources about home decarbonization. And this list of things doesn't include all our work on the solar PV side, which we had sort of a whole parallel set of incentives, community programs, also done work on ground source heat pumps, solar hot water, automated wood heat, kind of community programs on all of these, including as well as electric vehicles and batteries. So just a little bit of history of our work in this space, but I think you can see sort of a trend building towards thinking about buildings holistically and trying, with our more recent efforts, including this pilot, but also the Clean Energy Lives Here campaign, trying to think holistically about the whole building and make sure we're providing resources that touch on all pieces of that transition. So let me hand things over to Jacqueline to talk a little bit more about this particular pilot. And Jacqueline, I'll move slides forward when you're ready.
Great, thanks, Meg. So Decarbonization Pathways is a MASSCEC pilot that seeks to develop and test a home decarbonization assessment for single-family and low-rise residential buildings. The program will be conducted through three main steps. First, we'll develop a new and fully comprehensive residential decarbonization assessment protocol. And the lead technical consultant and advisory panel that we're talking about today will help primarily with this first step in creating and reviewing the residential decarbonization assessment protocol. Next, we'll perform the assessments on a diverse cohort of about 100 homes in the state and help those homes create a customized decarbonization plan. MASSCEC intends to release an RFP in October for an implementation vendor And that vendor will help with the assessment of the 100 homes. And then finally, after the assessments are completed, MASSCEC will offer incentives to help participants move forward with some or all of their decarbonization plan. MASSCEC is aiming for at least a third of the participants to fully decarbonize their home through the program. Next slide. So through this program, we're aiming to achieve a few goals. First, we're working to create and test a model for comprehensive consumer engagement and home decarbonization that could be scaled by MassSave or another entity. We're also looking to develop customer-facing resources and showcases to support homeowners and landlords that are ready and able to take action now to decarbonize their buildings. And lastly, we're looking to evaluate energy use in the home with the goal to eventually eliminate the use of fossil fuels from the home, in addition to promoting home efficiency. Next slide. So Leah and Meg are going to talk a little bit more about the details about how to apply and the roles of the advisory panel and the lead technical consultant. But these are the attachments that are listed on our website for both of the RFPs. And you can find the full request for proposals linked here or on our website. So each RFP has an authorized applicant signature and acceptance form. There's also an application form for the advisory panel and lead technical consultant, where we'll ask for more information about your qualifications and approach to the proposed scope of work. And then selected applicants will be asked to contract with MASSCEC, and we've provided a sample contract to review. If you have any questions or concerns about the contract, please include them in your application. And finally, we have 2 documents about the Massachusetts Home Energy Scorecard, which Alyssa from DOER is going to talk a little bit more about. Next slide. So this slide just shows the timeline for these 2 RFPs. Both RFPs were released on April 8th. And if you have any questions about either RFP or the Decarbonization Pathways program, you can ask us today during this webinar, or if you think of them afterwards, you can email us at buildings@masscec.com by April 28th. And then we will post any answers to the questions by May 5th. Proposals for both the advisory panel and the lead technical consultant are due on May 7th. And MASSCEC will review the applications and interview top applicants the weeks of May 17th and May 24th. And then finally, we'll select members of the advisory panel and the lead technical consultant by this June. Next slide. So in addition to the timeline of the RFPs, this is the general program timeline for all of Decarbonization Pathways. So after the advisory panel and lead technical consultant are selected in June, the decarbonization assessment protocols and customizable planning tool development will happen from mid-June to August. And the development of the decarbonization recommendation framework and homeowner resources will be developed starting in June through about December. And then in October, MASSCEC will release the RFP for the implementation vendor, review responses in November and December, and select the implementation vendor in December. The decarbonization assessments and initial decarbonization actions will start in January and continue through June 2022, or until we've assessed a diverse cohort of 100 homes. During this time, MASSCEC will also be offering incentives to homeowners to take action on decarbonization measures. Finally, MASSCEC will conduct outreach and follow up with the assessed homes for 5 years after the completion of the implementation phase. So next, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Leah, who's going to go through the role of the advisory panel and how to apply in more detail.
Hi everyone, thanks Jacqueline. So like she said, I'm just going to give a brief overview of the advisory panel, the role, and specific information about how to apply to this role. So first, MASSCEC is seeking members of an advisory panel specifically to review and provide input on the decarbonization assessment protocols, recommendation framework, and customizable planning tool as outlined in the RFP and as was mentioned previously. And this goes into a little bit more depth when we talk about the lead technical consultant, as they will be kind of spearheading this process. And then the advisory panel is expected to commit 20 to 50 hours of work in this review process. Additionally, applicants must be individuals, but they can be individuals that are part of companies, nonprofits, organizations, or networks, and they can represent those different companies as long as they let us know that they are representing them. Additionally, we welcome advisory panel members to volunteer. We've already reached out to several folks from DOER and MASSCEC'S to serve on the advisory panel as volunteers or as part of their current roles. Next slide. Thank you. So we are looking for different levels of expertise for members of the advisory panel. For example, background on home energy assessment, building science, and residential electrification, experience with energy efficient and electrified retrofit of low income and/or affordable single family and low-rise housing, familiarity with the customer perspective and/or user experience design, specifically thinking of low-income residents and communities, user design experience, transportation and electric vehicle expertise, building-related health, or resilience to climate change and extreme weather. So as you can see, there's a wide range of different specialties that we're interested in having perspectives of on the advisory panel. Next slide. So thinking about the scope of what the advisory panel will be doing, and the review and input they will be providing, the review will consist of providing comments on the following deliverables produced by the lead technical consultant. And those are, as previously mentioned, the assessment protocols, recommendations framework, customizable planning tool, and homeowner resources. And this review will take place in 3 different phases. So the initial review will include a reaction to the high-level concept and comments on the detailed draft. And then a further review, including new comments after 20 assessments are completed, as well as a third review after all assessments or around 100 homes have been completed. Next slide. So as mentioned before, advisory member panels are welcome to volunteer for this role. Applicants to serve on the advisory panel for a total budget of around $25,000 that MASSCEC'S is offering. Individual awards will be paid a flat fee for their services. Applicants can indicate that they are willing to volunteer or propose a fee up to $5,000 for their time. And here is just a quick snapshot of how to apply. More information can be found on our website. Responses must be submitted via email to buildings@masscec.com no later than Friday, May 7th at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And applicants should include Attachment A, the signature and acceptance form, Attachment B, the application for the advisory panel, in which they will indicate their request fee to participate on the advisory panel. And we will include a quick highlight of Attachment B following the slide. Additionally, we ask that applicants attach the resume of the individual that will be part of the advisory panel, and they should review and be prepared to sign Attachment C or the sample agreement. Next slide. So here's a quick overview of what Attachment B looks like. As you can see, it includes basic contact information for the individual. You can include your requested fee to serve on the advisory panel. An individual or organization description, depending on if you are serving simply by yourself or representing an organization or company. Additionally, you can review Attachment Attachment C, the sample agreement, and then you will provide experience about your expertise relevant to the Decarbonization Pathways program. And finally, advisory panel selection criteria includes a few different aspects. So first, we will look at the completeness of your application if everything is given to us and filled out completely and on time, experience and qualifications, as well as uniqueness of perspective. We are looking to get a wide variety of expertise on the panel to fully represent what the advisory panel can look at in the program. And I'll pass it over to Meg to talk about the lead technical consultant.
Thanks, Leah. So along with the advisory panel, we're seeking a lead technical consultant or team to actually be the ones to develop the protocols for decarbonization assessment And I'll say more about this, but we're looking to build on the framework and successes of the MassSave home energy assessment with the end goal of full home decarbonization, and then create a framework, what recommendations would come out of that assessment based on current, what is current best practices and technology that balances weatherization, electrification, and operating costs. So just a note on that, I think, we're open to newer technologies, but we do want this to be something like, based on what exists out there today, what is recommended, not like what we think could exist in 5 years. The plan would be that we would update this over time as new technologies and practices come onto the market. And then to sort of provide a structure for customizable individual decarbonization plans based on the outcomes of the assessment and the goals of the homeowner. So we're looking for, it's a lot of different topics that are all covered in here. So you'll see the bolded note here that we certainly welcome teams. Certainly an individual entity could apply and may have all this expertise, but also welcome teams that have complementary expertise, with energy assessments, technical knowledge about any of these building systems, diversity, equity, inclusion, communication, marketing, cost estimation, sort of analytical capability, and then just facilitation and project management are the different areas of expertise we're looking for here. And I thought this would be a good time to mention that we have set up a Slack channel to help people connect and form teams. It's also another place people can ask questions. We will post all questions that are answered in the Slack channel on the website with our list of questions. But you can email, you can ask questions now, but you can also post them on the Slack channel. You certainly don't have to use this for forming teams. I know a lot of you know each other, have companies you already like to work with. That's great too. But we wanted to set this up in case it's a helpful resource for people looking for team members. If you have any questions about this, feel free to reach out to us about how to use it. So the scope, we sort of outlined 6 tasks here with a 7th placeholder for miscellaneous things that may come up. The first is developing what are those assessment protocols, then building on that, what's the recommendation framework coming out of it. Then the 3rd task, creating something consumer facing that is a customizable decarbonization planning tool for that homeowner. And then another task, there will be a separate RFP at a later time for an implementation vendor to actually go out and do the assessments, but wanting this first consultant to support that work. And then once some of those results come back, to iteratively go back and modify the first 3 tasks based on in-field results. And then finally, 6 tasks to turn these into something that is sort of consumer, customer facing, even for people who haven't had the assessment. So kind of taking the thinking that's come out of this exercise and turn it into a resource that someone could look at for their own home, whether or not they've actually had one of these assessments. And I said I would talk more about this. We do hope to build on the protocols and successes of MassSave's mass market home energy assessment. So we are looking for applicants that have a familiarity with that home energy assessment process, as well as other energy efficiency assessment protocols, that are working directly with homeowners and residents. A goal of our pilot is that we would be able to offer incentives that stack on top of other incentives, especially those offered by MassSave. This is sort of more up to us to really make it work, but we want a lead technical consultant that is going to be kind of collaborative and finding a path forward on that. And we have reached out and have some representatives from the program administrators on MassSave who have committed to serve on the advisory panel, and so can help be partners in this goal, but it will just help our budget and our incentive dollars stretch further if they can stack on top of MassSave incentives if not, we may have to scale back number of homes we're reaching with our budget that we have. One other piece that I wanted to highlight, and this is why Alyssa's here and she can talk more about this, but I'll just set her up that, part of building on the MassSave home energy assessment is we know that they will soon start offering Massachusetts home energy scorecards for all of their assessments. So we'd like to build on that framework, and Alyssa and they've she'll tell you more about this, but it's it's something that's coming, and so we think it would be a good framework to build on as an end product of these decarbonization assessments. So attached to the RFP is a full PDF that includes this image of what those home energy scorecards will look like, as well as more detailed requirements on like what goes into them. Now I can turn things over to Alyssa to maybe tell a little bit more about where things stand with the home energy assessment currently.
Sure. Thanks, Meg. Yeah, so MassSave has committed to integrating scorecards into their audit. This is an example scorecard that we've provided to them. This is an example scorecard that we've also been working with 3 different software providers to integrate into their already existing software. And it's also just the product. I mean, DOER has been piloting scorecards for a number of years now. We did a pilot way back in 2012 to 2014 in the Springfield area where we integrated scorecards, and then the home MVP pilot that Meg mentioned at the beginning also integrates scorecards. So I'll just sort of walk through this a little bit. I mean, the primary metrics on it are the home energy use and the home carbon footprint. They provide the energy use, at the time of the audit, and then what it would be after recommendations are implemented. Same thing on the carbon footprint. The energy use, is total energy use. It's in MMBTUs, includes, all the site-based, energy that's being used in the home. Also, both scores include like a comparison to the average in Massachusetts. That helps provide a frame of reference for the homeowner. These are both the energy use and the carbon footprint are both asset scores. So the software providers that are working on integrating this scorecard into their software are also required to use the same underlying engine that the DOE home energy score uses to produce the home energy use metrics and the home carbon footprint metrics. And then you'll see we actually have the DOE home energy score also on the scorecard. The information that is sort of in the gray box on the left-hand side, those metrics can also come from essentially from the DOE home energy score engine, or they can come from, they can be more, operational based, so that the homeowner has a real sense of like what will the cost savings be, if the recommended measures are implemented. Yeah, so this is the scorecard that we've been piloting and that our software providers have been developing, and I'm happy to answer questions at the end, whenever is appropriate for questions.
Thanks, Alyssa. In terms of the budget, the request for proposals sort of puts out a soft budget of 150,000. I'm saying it's a soft budget. That's sort of our our best first attempt, but this is sort of, a lot of, it's complicated stuff and it's new territory. So if you believe that you need additional funding to do the proposed tasks, then you can request a higher budget and just explain why that's necessary. And then also there is an option if you want to propose additional tasks on top of sort of what the scope we've outlined, you can do that as well. Sort of imagining that this contract would be hourly, not to exceed a mutually agreed upon maximum. So to apply, it's very similar to the advisory panel, although the application is more in depth, but there's the same attachment A, which is a signature and acceptance form. And then attachment B is really the bulk of the application with questions. We ask people to attach team member resumes as well as up to 3 marketing samples. We have already gotten a question through the Slack channel, so we do look at it of could you attach other visuals that might go along with some of the narrative questions that are in attachment B? And the answer to that is yes. If you feel like there's some visuals that would help explain what you're proposing in your attachment B narratives, you can attach those as well. And then we asked us if people have reviewed and be prepared to sign the sample, not that you're gonna sign the sample agreement, but review our standard contract and be prepared to sign it, or else note if you have any questions or concerns about it. So these are just some screenshots of attachment B, like I said, which is the bulk of the actual application. Some contact information, a description of your organization, or if there's multiple organizations that are on the applicant team, you just go ahead and put in descriptions of each of them. Want to hear about your experiences. We ask for references, and then ask for a proposed approach for each of the tasks that are outlined in the scope that I went over a minute ago. And then we ask for rates for the team members that you anticipate will be working on this, and then a sense of timeline and budget for each of the tasks that I went over. And then room to add additional tasks. Like I said, if you feel like there's some other piece that you'd like to propose, we consider adding to this. Selection criteria are in the RFP, but their completeness of proposed approach, the team's experience and qualifications, cost competitiveness of the proposal, overall quality of the proposal, and then if there is a team, more than one entity, we'd like to see either a demonstrated history of working together or sort of a clear partnership structure that we feel like this team's going to work well together. So that's really it. I'm going to hand it over to questions. I see we've had a few come in. I think the one thing I wanted to clarify from what we've already said is for the advisory panel, we are looking for individuals to be on the advisory panel, but as Leah said, you can do it on behalf of an organization. So, if you work for a firm, we're looking for like one person to kind of be the point person and come to the advisory committee meetings. But it can be your firm that we pay. We don't have to like set up an arrangement with you as an individual. It can be an organization or firm that we pay, but we just want to have that representative that's on the advisory panel. So I think maybe I'll just dive into the questions we've had coming in. First one I see here is that the focus on our building programs appears to target single family or 4+ units. Do we also have programs for multifamily or other commercial? It's a good question. I should say yes. This pilot is focused around low-rise residential retrofits. So that's sort of the history that I pulled, and probably have but MASSCEC does have other programs to serve multifamily residential as well as commercial building types. And we're looking to kind of do similar work for all of those building types as well. But I pulled the focus on our low-rise residential history since that's what the focus of this pilot is. The next question we have is how many people are we looking to be on the advisory panel? It's a little bit of a question mark. I think you saw Leah said the budget we have tentatively set aside for this is 25,000, and then individual members can request up to 5,000. So that would be like 5 entities. Although, like I said, we have already identified some entities who partners through MassSave who will sort of volunteer their time or as part of their current job would serve on this for no fee. So that's sort of I think we don't have a fixed number in our head, but somewhere between 5 and 15 probably as a broad range. Then the next question is, are we going to have a goal of energy use intensity so that we're insulating well before going to all electric? I think that's part of what we want the lead technical consultant to help us figure out. I mean, at a high level, we're going to have some kind of weatherization goal before going to all electric. But exactly what that is and the staging of it, like, is an open question. But yes, certainly weatherization, efficiency are going to be an important part of getting that building to be sort of 2050 ready, if you will. Then the next question is, can you let us know which 3 software companies are working on integrating the Massachusetts Home Energy Scorecard? Maybe I'll hand that over to Alyssa. I know it is in the RFP, but I think Alyssa could probably speak to it a little bit better, the 3 companies.
Yeah, so the 3 companies are Snug Home, ID Energy, and Ecotrope. I mean, for these purposes, well, those are the 3. I mean, I'll just say that Ecotrope, is a company that, does HERS ratings. So those are typically used on new construction. This pilot, my understanding, is about existing homes. So just to note that. We just also, so we also, DOER worked with Snug Home in the Home MVP pilot and the scorecards that were produced there. And ID Energy is a company that works with home inspectors. So those are the 3.
And just to be clear, we're not requiring that teams work with one of these 3. I think, in fact, in the RFP, we say, don't finalize your software partner. You can come in with sort of a proposed software partner, but we want to start, have some preliminary discussions before we finalize the software solution. But, I think DOER has made it so that what they're looking for in this scorecard could be developed by another company. I believe MassSave is working with a 4th entity to develop their scorecard. So we just wanted to let you know of companies that are already, have developed this kind of tool already.
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing to know is that Snug Home is the design that we've that they've developed with our funding is they're going to open source it. So just to know that. I mean, I think the thing to note really is that the funding that DOER provided to these 3 companies allowed them to basically, integrate the engine that the DOE Home Energy Score uses. So that just helps standardize the outputs from the software.
And then the next question is, if there's been any calculation of context and speed. So in other words, in the context of our state's 2050 decarbonization roadmap and 2030 clean energy and climate plan, has anyone calculated whether this effort, 100 homes by 2022, fits and is sufficient for the ramp? This is probably a leading question. If people have looked at those documents, they have pretty ambitious targets by 2030, and like 100 homes is definitely not cutting it at all. So this is not meant to be this is how we're solving everything with this one pilot. And I guess what I'll just say is, we're not slowing down the state's other efforts that, MassSave is going full steam ahead with their 3-year planning process is really heating up right now, and they'll have, incentives that will be ongoing. This is just to kind of keep learning and making sure we're iterating as we go forward. but this isn't meant to be, I don't have any illusion that this is fully scaled to the challenge or the goals that we have as a state. The next question is if there's any conflict of interest between this RFP for the lead technical consultant and then the role of the implementation vendor, can the same firm earn both? The answer to that is yes, but that will be a separate request for proposals at a later time. So we'd welcome whoever wins this contract to also apply for that contract, but it's certainly not guaranteed and will be opened up for others. And we want to make sure that that the process is truly open, that we're developing something that could be adopted by other implementation vendors. So yes, the same firm can earn both, but it isn't guaranteed by any means. Similar question, is there a conflict of interest between serving on the advisory panel and then bidding and winning the implementer role? Yeah, I think that's a good question. We had probably have not addressed that as directly, but that would also be allowable. Yes, that would be fine. I'm trying to say, yes, that's fine. No, there's no conflict, but that would be fine. Another question, if Mass Clean Energy Center anticipates a commercial and industrial focus in the future. Yes, it's definitely something we have done work on in the past. We've had VRF incentives, commercial ground source. We currently have a VRF in a public housing project that's underway. And we expect in the coming months, hopefully, to sort of be getting approval and moving forward for similar kind of whole building, holistically focused decarbonization efforts on at least the commercial side. I think I'll say at this time, we don't have any plans that truly address like industrial facilities. I wouldn't rule it out for the future, but at least on the commercial side, I think we'll have more coming soon. The next question is, how much of a focus of this RFP, if at all, is on the software side of tool development for the decarb assessment tool? Yeah, this is a good question, and I think if you look at the language in the RFP, there we've put a lot in there about what we might like to see, but there are also a lot of caveats about like what's possible under the budget. So I think like we've discussed on this webinar, we'd really like to see some kind of solution that integrates with the home energy scorecard, assuming budget allows for it. So maybe I should back up. The answer to this question is we do expect that the lead technical consultant will put together sort of the assessment protocols, including any software or whatever kind of tools would go into the assessment itself. If there's actual like software licenses or use fees, that could go on to a different budget, but we would, as part of this scope, ask for the development of the actual assessment tools, expecting that those will include some kind of software component. And so we expect for the budget, we're proposing that people will want to leverage existing tools that are already out there. So that's definitely something we'd encourage. And then also just one final point on this topic. I think again, for the budget we're proposing, and at this point, recognize that we might not have a perfect software tool. And I think part of our thinking on that is that we'd rather develop something, go out in the field, even if it's a little bit rough, get that input from actually having the data on the homes, and then sort of think about iterating it later to really refine it before sinking a ton of money to have the perfect software solution up front. So in summary, yes, we are looking for this lead technical consultant to develop the tools that will go into an assessment. We'd highly encourage people to use existing tools out there to be able to do this cost effectively. And we recognize that this might not be the 100% perfect tool when we get out in the field, but are just sort of eager to get something together and get out in the field, and then think about iterating after that. Another question, if we anticipate a similar program for small business or other commercial, yes, we like I said before, we are hoping to do something on the commercial side as a next step. I don't have too many details to share about that yet, but we are hoping to do something similar on the commercial side. The next question is that we mentioned a 5-year monitoring intention. Can we explain in more detail whose role that would be and how it's shared between the technical consultant, implementer, and other parties? So that monitoring would not be part of the role of this lead technical consultant. I think I'll probably leave it there for now. The monitoring role would fall on the implementation vendor, not this lead technical consultant that we're procuring for now. The next question, are you expecting any lead technical consultant has a deep understanding of how the 3 vendors' data platforms and APIs work? I don't think we're, no, not necessarily is the answer to that question, but we are looking for people that can work with software vendors. Not that whatever organization is sort of the prime applicant has that deep knowledge themselves, but that they can work with software vendors to build a process. The next question is, will the scorecard modeling engine be swapped over to the Energy Plus when DOE moves to that engine in May? Alyssa, do you know the answer to that?
My understanding is that will just happen. So my understanding is that the answer is yes. I can double check on that though. And if it's a different answer, we could put it in the Slack channel.
Okay, great. We'll assume yes for now. And then a similar question about measurement and verification, if we anticipate using a third-party vendor for measurement and verification aspects of the pilot once implemented. Yeah, I think, just to reiterate that wouldn't be part of the role that we're seeking for this lead technical consultant, and, would be something that we procure later when we're procuring an implementation vendor. It is possible that would be a third party, that we've looked for someone independent. I don't think we've made that decision yet. The next question is if there's an interest in providing an estimated project cost to achieve the estimated dollar savings in the scorecards. Assuming I understand the question correctly, are we looking for someone who can help estimate cost and not just energy savings of the measures that are being proposed? I think the answer to that is yes. That is something that we want to be able to talk about with the pilot participants. I also think part of the goal of doing this pilot and going forward, having participants actually do the work is to get better data on how much this all costs, and if you package it together, how much does it all cost and all that. But a lot of these measures separately, there's already really good data on how much it costs. So I think we would be looking to set up something that does balance upfront costs, operating costs, energy savings, carbon savings, and sort of have that conversation about how those all fit together. Okay, the next question is, for many homeowners, decarbonization is a consideration when making home improvements or investments, yet it's not the primary driver for decision making. How much flexibility is MASSCEC willing to accommodate for a customer-centered home improvement plan, which may prioritize some items for the customer that are not explicitly decarbonization based, but might be important to proceed for the customer? So if I understand this question correctly, what is like, people want to renovate their kitchen because they want like a new kitchen. And that's definitely something when we talked about task 3 there for a customizable planning tool, we'd like to have an end result of this be something that does feel personal, where, there's an assessor that goes in and does sort of a standard assessment of your home, but then has a tool that facilitates a conversation about that specific homeowner's goals. So, okay, you're going to renovate your kitchen. Well, let's make sure you're thinking about like, okay, is this a good time to consider going to an induction stove? And, is there some exterior walls that we could talk about insulating? And, that sort of understands what the homeowner's goals are for their home, and builds in opportunities for decarbonization and efficiency with those goals. I don't think probably the tool won't fully be like about kitchen remodels and bath remodels, but we do have a goal in there that their decarbonization plan sort of is personalized and customizable based on their goals as a homeowner. The next question is, are we expecting to conduct a formal evaluation for the pilot? I guess I would say at this time, probably the answer is no. That's not currently our plan, although as you've heard from my earlier answers, I don't think we've totally settled on the plan and the scale and the budget for the evaluation piece of it. But I would say probably at this time, that's not something we're necessarily planning, although we are planning on some kind of data collection. Certainly lessons learned, case studies will be important for us. So okay, I see one more question here. Is it a goal for the decarbonization plan to include the embodied energy of the retrofit materials in the overall assessments? Embodied carbon and energy is definitely a topic that MASSCEC'S is very interested in. It was one of the focus areas, is that the right word? Like judging areas under our recent triple-decker design challenge. It's a good question. I would honestly need to go back and look and remind myself what we put in the RFP about this. So maybe on this particular question, let me, it's an area we're very interested in. There's a lot we already have going on this pilot. So I won't fully answer this question. I'll follow up with a written answer of exactly how much we definitely want to see versus would like to see, or just, could be mentioned for informational purposes. So let me follow up on that one.
Meg, we have a few more questions that came in through the chat. First is, over how many weeks will the advisory panel be doing its work?
Good question. I think maybe if we go back to this table, will sort of give the best overview. It will really happen from the time that the advisory panel is announced. Let's say if that's mid-June, sometime in June. And then it will go until, we've completed all the assessments. So we're saying here that's June 2022. So a time frame of about a year. I think there'll definitely be more focused work probably in the first 2 to 3 months. But then, part of our timeline here is that we want to, why we've broken these two out separately instead of just saying like, figure it all out, is that we want to start figuring out enough of the details of the assessment protocol itself so that we can go out and write an RFP for an implementation vendor. And then while that process is going on, that will give us some time to finalize all the details about what the actual recommendations are and what the resources for homeowners look like. So that's sort of why we want to jumpstart just enough so that we can go out and procure for an implementation vendor. So that's a little bit of a tangent to the question, but giving some context that there'll be some probably more intense work in the first couple months and the first 6 months, we'll be sort of finalizing all that initial stage. And so that will be probably the bulk of the work for the members of the advisory panel, but then there will be a second chunk after we've done the first 20 assessments, so sometime early 2022, and then a final chunk when we've done all of the assessments, just to look and see if anything, any of the thinking of the advisory panels changed based on what we've actually experienced in the field. So we're currently saying that will happen June 2022. It's possible that could get pushed back a little bit. So sort of spaced out over, a year plus.
Another question that came in through the chat is, are you expecting or aware of whether the 3 software providers noted are proposing for the RFP as lead technical consultants?
I am not aware of them doing that. I think they could do it. We have said in the RFP that we'd like teams to remain, they can have a proposed software approach, but we'd like them to remain sort of not finalize that decision until we've contracted and we can kind of talk this over with them. So I think that would make it difficult for any of these 3 companies to be the lead applicant. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. If people have more specific follow-up questions, I'd welcome them on this topic. I know that the role of software in this has been a particularly tricky issue to sort through for me. So welcome further questions and clarifications on that. Are there any other questions on the chat? I see more have come in on the Q&A.
One other question on the chat, which I'm sorry, I don't think we can answer, is will MASSCEC'S be modifying its incentive structure metrics to align with GHG? Historically, they look at EUI and cost benefit ratio, which doesn't necessarily align with decarbonization strategies.
Yeah, that's a question for them to answer, not us. I see some other questions have come in on the Q&A. A question if there's a general outreach and or advertisement for home decarbonization. For example, the main goal is home heating and cooking electrification, better insulation. Can MASSCEC have a general ad like in YouTube or newspaper or TV channels? I will say that is part of our Clean Energy Lives Here campaign. We have general resources on a website. Let me just share that quickly. In case anyone's not familiar with it, we have this consumer-facing website that has a lot of resources on different decarbonization home solutions. It's got it has like a guide to your clean energy home, is sort of a high-level overview of all this stuff, and then more in-depth stuff, resources like guides and about these specific technologies. So besides this website, we have been doing advertising. We have a little bit of in-person advertising, like on bike stands and trash compactors, not trash, those public trash receptacles. And we have more online advertising through social media, Google searches. So that's something we've been doing and are planning to continue doing next year. And it's definitely something we expect will sort of tie in with this in the field pilot. The information we're presenting on this website will learn from this in the field pilot, and then vice versa, that these resources can help complement that in the field effort. So thank you for that suggestion. It's definitely, I think, a good opportunity. I realize we are at time, so people, of course, feel free to hop off if you need. I think we'll stay a few more minutes, try and answer these questions, and then the recording will be posted if people need to hop off now. The next question is 20 to 50 hours per person as an advisory consultant, or 20 to 50 hours per organization. I think it was total. So if there are sort of, you know, one point person, but a couple people from an organization are weighing in, that was sort of our ballpark for like total commitment. You know, it could obviously be, you know, these are complicated topics. You could spend more time on it, but I think that's our ballpark of what we're hoping people would spend on it. Just as you're thinking through your interest in this opportunity. Then the next question is, when counting low-rise multifamily toward the 100 goal, is that dwelling units or buildings? And it would be dwelling units. So for example, if we had a 2-family, we'd count that as 2 of the 100 and not 1 of the 100. And then the next similar question on a similar topic is there a general hope for balance between single family and low-rise multifamily? We haven't established that at this time. Like I mentioned, we have some specific work on triple-decker retrofits that is going on in parallel. So we know we're going to be doing around 20 triple-decker retrofits. But in terms of this pilot and the funding for this, we haven't yet carved out targets for low-rise multifamily versus single family. And the next question is, do we envision the advisory panel making recommendations on increasing mass-save incentives that support deeper energy retrofits as part of the implementation pilot? I don't know if a deliverable will be like, we're not looking for a deliverable to be like, this is our recommendation to mass save from this lead technical consultant or the advisory panel, but you know, one thing we will be looking for is like, what is the right balance of weatherization and how deep do you need to go for then to make sense to electrify and have that be cost effective? So we'll be having those sort of technical questions as part of our recommendations, and also be looking for support on how we structure the incentives for this pilot. And like I said, we are hoping ideally to stack those on top of existing mass save incentives. So I think through those two things, like there will be sort of like our take on where incentive levels and weatherization targets need to go to kind of be hitting our state's long-term targets. But I don't expect that we'll have something explicitly framed as a recommendation to mass save. I'll stay on. Those are all the questions we have, unless Jacqueline, any more came into the chat.
No, I think we covered all of them.
All right, we'll wait one more minute here, and then we'll sign off. But we do welcome questions at any time to that email address, buildings@MASSCEC, on the Slack channel, and we will post a recording of this webinar. And I guess before we sign off, I think if everyone's on this webinar, you've probably gotten the link, but just to make sure everyone knows like where these documents are that we're talking about, this is just our homepage, masscec.com. If you go to About MassCEC, we have a landing page for active solicitations. And then these are the two we've talked about today for the advisory panel and the lead technical consultant. Both of these links take you to the same page, which is a summary of both opportunities. So stuff we've all gone over today about the timing of these opportunities, what you need to do, all the documents for each of the two opportunities, as well as a link to the Slack channel for the lead technical consultant. So just making sure that everyone knows where that is. I haven't seen any more questions come in, so I think we'll sign off for now. Thanks everyone for joining us, and please do reach out if you have any further questions or clarifications.